We are looking live at the JT and Looney Podcast, October 8th, 2025. Now, we're supposed to all sound shocked that it's October. You know, they're like the newscasters. Oh, I can't believe it's October already. You know that bit? It's October, Tom. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I saw that reel on Instagram, and it just proves, people think there's grand conspiracies sometimes with news media. No, everyone's just lazy. Everyone's lazy and copies each other. And so it drives me crazy. Matter of fact, not just with the small talk. Hey, it's October. And that was a great reel. Anytime there's a fire, it's a blaze. Any guy with a gun is a gunman. Lazy writing. They're always misusing the word ironic. And there's this, everyone's bracing. We're bracing for a shutdown. We're bracing for weather, for bad weather. Everyone's bracing. No one has a thesaurus in the entire news business in the United States. They can't organize a conspiracy. They can't even organize a thesaurus.
Yeah, it's interesting. People are really lazy right now as broadcasters. I'm really struggling with it. ESPN, the late night ESPN, because I'm on late night. Mm-hmm. So I'm on, at late. And so when my show ends at 11 p.m. Pacific, the 10 o'clock Pacific Sports Center is ending. And the last thing they do is I call her the actress. I think it's Nicole Briscoe, and it used to be, I think it's Michael Eaves, friend of the show.
I like him, yeah.
And they bring out a couch and a coffee mug, and they actually bring out a couch. And my son says, Dad, this is a really big thing around my house. My people, my wife, my kids always say this. What's the main thing you would say to your dad or your husband? Oh, can I borrow some money? Can I have the keys to the car? What's for dinner? No, they always say, why does this bother you so much? Like my whole family says that to me. So I'm watching them put someone at ESPN Sports Center decided to bring out a couch.
People who get texts from you are saying the same thing, of course. Your mean girl text.
So in the history of Sports Center, which started in '79, and some of the greatest names ever, Scott Van Pelt currently, Rich Eisen, Dan Patrick, Keith, before it was Keith and Pedro, before Keith kind of went off the reservation and kind of went a little batty with all that happening. And so they bring out a couch on the set. So someone freaking moved a couch onto the set, and the female anchor has a blanket. And they do this like talk to wrap up the show in my head, because I am freaking fighting to get to the end of my show, right? I'm trying to get one more caller in, one more soundbite. And I look up and I see them on a couch.
Putting her feet up.
She's got socks on, and she's got like a blanket. And someone who's producing and directing it believed that Sports Center needed to do that. Like, came up with that freaking idea in the commissary or at a bar, and it passed through everybody. It passed through everyone in Bristol, and they agreed on that.
We've always joked about the people in the corner office. Just 20 years ago, we said to each other, we should be presidents of these sports networks. We realized we could be, because I remember one of the great examples was we could have come up with a better name for a sports network than Versus. Remember Versus? And that had to go through all these people. And you see that all the time in life. You see it in television. You see road signs in major cities that have the name of a major famous street spelled wrong. That had to go by a lot of people, including the guys putting the sign up. They had to miss that. So it's my chaos theory of the universe. I always talk about this with my brother. Of the chaos theory of the universe. No one really knows what they're doing. Everyone has the same IQ, and we kind of sometimes, some of us get amazing jobs that we're not qualified for. I'm saying us as human beings, and we're bullshitting our way through it, or we're trying to rise to the level of the job that we have while we're on the job. Nobody knows what they're doing, and I think circling back, sometimes you spot it more than ever in sports broadcasting, and I spot it and I have to text a friend about this. I went to Catholic schools. You went to godless public schools, so I'm getting into heaven faster, as I always mention. And I couldn't get past first grade. You cannot get, it's first grade grammar. You cannot say me and JT. Join me and JT. Join me and Joe. You couldn't utter that in first grade without a teacher correcting you and say, it's JT and me, or it's JT and I, depending on the sentence, whether it's the beginning or the end. And in first grade grammar, professional, even network level, major market guys tweeting out or reading something. Join me in his first grade grammar. It's lazy. It's incredibly lazy. And it wasn't that lazy when back in our day, when someone was on a network in a major market, they had a boss who said, hey. Now no one has one. As you know, they can't afford the bosses anymore at a lot of places. So everyone's on their own and doing bad broadcasting.
Well, I have a clock in my head. It's always a clock in my head. You help me with that. I'm always saying, get back to sports,
Yes,
quick.
yes.
And I don't like right now when people say and that came heavy with the Kardashians. So Kardashians changed the world. Everybody kind of had a default and said it was like this, it was like that. Well, Wolf Blitzer doesn't say it's like this. We're going to go out to Gaza because it's like, no, he doesn't do that because he's a professional broadcaster. Then they put the Kardashians on television and they gave him a show, which was supposed to be reality, but it was mostly scripted. And everybody said like. And then all the young people, mostly girls who watched it, said it. And then it exploded like a mushroom cloud. And it's on broadcasting. So every once in a while when I'm sitting around and I hear someone do it, and I'm not perfect. I have a fourth grade vocabulary. But when I hear myself say I stop. I have a mechanism and says, get back to talking like an adult.
All right. I have a friend who used to be an intern. There's several interns. We cross barriers in our lives and make things called friends. And you and I never stop that. Some people stop at a certain age. And he was a former intern, pushing 30, and he realized from LA, with that comes from Valley Girls too. I'm gonna go to mall, and then I saw bad guy, and then I saw accident, and he had to do that conscientious effort like you did. And when he turned 30, I got to stop talking like a Valley girl with all these likes. And I admire when people take a great effort at trying to speak, but I've seen athletes do it. I've seen athletes in college who speak into a microphone and it's a disaster, but they get better and better and better over time. We've seen it with Josh Allen. Josh Allen with his uhs and his ums was a disaster when he first started, but he's worked on it. I admire that.
I admire that too. Speaking of the Valley in Los Angeles, a Valley guy's in trouble, even though he lived more in the South Bay. But want to make the connection to Mark Sanchez. And I haven't talked about this a lot for a number of reasons with Mark Sanchez, but we're going to get into it because we're podcasting. And my current agent and a current mentor to you always reminded me, JT, a podcast is a radio show. You can get in trouble for a podcast, just like a radio show, which we're seeing. So I don't think we have to tread lightly because this is now a police investigation for what happened last Saturday night or Friday into Saturday morning in Indianapolis when Mark Sanchez was coming back to his hotel. And the next thing you know, we find out he was stabbed. He was stabbed in an altercation. There was some initial reports when we all woke up that he was in critical condition and/or stable condition. And then a lot of people jumped the gun. I put out something quickly that said, thinking of Mark or something, I could find it. It's a thoughts and prayers tweet because that's the right thing to do. The story didn't come out. Someone was injured in the hospital in really bad condition. I've met Mark before. I don't know him well. I've interviewed him double-digit times over my 30-year career. I interviewed him when he was at USC and he was playing. So I just said that, and then it erupted 6 hours later when we found out that it looks like allegedly he was the aggressor in this altercation with the 69-year-old man who is really injured and banged up also in the hospital. And now that individual has a lawsuit against Mark Sanchez and Fox. So what do you think about this? You're in LA, you do the news. How big of a story is it in LA? It should be massive.
Right. It was definitely a massive story in LA. And I remember I was asking a friend of mine back east if it was as big there, and it wasn't. So he's kind of a Southern California icon. He's my favorite guest on Colin Cowherd. My favorite guest. I think he's the best. He was the best analyst on the NFL. He was never going to rise and take Tom Brady's spot or Troy Aikman's spot because of his there you go with the Illinois Cup. I love it. he was never going to rise and be on a number one team, even though he was good enough, because they like to have somebody more famous do that. I love when he broke down film on Colin Cowherd, which he probably won't do again, because doesn't matter whose fault it is, you don't get in a fight with a 69-year-old, especially when you're professional athletes. Guys who play in the NFL, even quarterbacks, the guys at that level have a different set of leverage. They can beat up 5 guys in a row. And no matter what happened, it seems like he was doing wind sprints in the alley, maybe trying to sweat out because maybe he had a morning meeting. Not sure about that, but it was no matter what the details are. I saw the pictures of the guy. The picture of that guy makes him unhireable for anything public for the rest of the picture of that 69-year-old man who's got who's got a cut in his face like Nicole had on her neck, but she's lucky it's the cheek. Not only is Mark lucky in terms of murder charges or it's manslaughter, the man is lucky he's alive. And I can't look at a 69-year-old guy like that, no matter what the story is, and ever visualize Mark's. And I'm only human. Feel bad that anytime anybody's worst moment in life is on videotape, I always feel bad that that's going to be everyone's image for the rest of life with the advent of cameras and security guys. One quick note, a note to our affiliates up and down the line, and to you, JT. You're going to kill me if we are this far into the podcast. As every time I talk, I forget that you talk too. And you need to turn your gain down in your mic just a little. It's just a little bit overmodulated.
Thank you. Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem because I never touch my gain, or I don't touch any freaking thing on this thing. So I'm always amazed when it's not perfect all the time. How does that sound better? Are we pretty good on the live stream?
We're going to turn it down a little bit. Just a little bit.
Okay, so that's the gain down here a little bit. How about that? 1, 2, 3. That should be a little better, or no?
A little more down.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to move it down. How about that? Is that a little bit better?
Yes, much
3,
better.
2, and 1. Okay, so let me give you an update on the Mark Sanchez case, if this sounds a little bit better. A quote from Ryan Mears from the Marion County Prosecutor's Office: "This incident should have never happened. What began as a disagreement between a 38-year-old former professional athlete and a 69-year-old man should have not escalated into violence or left anyone seriously injured. As with any case, we will follow the facts of the law and whatever happens going forward." So here's where I think there's a big story. And former college basketball head coach Dan Dockich, who was later an announcer for ESPN, many people are calling him a racist because right after it happened, he said, quote, "Sanchez or anyone being stabbed down in downtown Indy should not be a surprise. We have a ton of fatherless and armed African-American kids descending on downtown Indy every weekend. If that offends you, F off. As the chief of police, Bailey and Rev Harrison have told you this," he wrote. Well, that was it for him, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Because he jumped the gun. He jumped the gun. And that's what I wanted to talk about with Mark Sanchez. This is an ongoing investigation, period. Okay, so Mark Sanchez is going to have a side to this story, and he's going to have big, powerful attorneys that are going to say certain things. Cameras will come out. There wasn't really any eyewitnesses other than the cameras there, but how dare anybody? How dare anybody? And in some of our cities around America, that we have violent cities throughout America and violent downtowns where there are a lot of stabbings and muggings and all that happening. But to jump the gun and to say that it could have been African Americans or a certain demographic was so out of line. And then that was the kerosene on the fire about 5-6 hours into this story. And then everybody was going after him and everybody was fighting as 2 individuals, Tom, were in the hospital trying to survive their wounds.
It's terrible. And it's an outright, and it's in this country, the people who are killing each other look like each other. So that's why it's also an unnecessary comment racializing something that wasn't racial. It was bad behavior by at least one intoxicated person. Doesn't matter whether or not the guy was. And I don't know. From what I hear, also Mark doesn't remember much of it. From what I've heard from a source. But it's when you want to get with your thumbs and racialize something, you're going to lose your job. It's like you said with your podcast. Well, there's other ways to lose your job these days. You can do it with your podcast. You can do it with your thumbs on Twitter. We got to comment. You don't have to have an opinion on Indianapolis. Indianapolis doesn't have an opinion on you. You don't have to have an opinion on this case. Now, I'm saying that as two guys who jump on the air and have to have opinions. We have to, but not everybody has to, and you don't have to let it bother you. It doesn't have an opinion on you. You don't have to have an opinion on it.
But we're allowed to still do thoughts and prayers, and that's the whole thing with this podcast that we're doing. Mark Sanchez will have his day in court.
Yep.
So will the other individual who looks like he's going to have, as we're going through this. There's a lot of evidence that he was a truck driver going to work to trade out some type of oil from a machine to do his job, and he might have had a weapon on him for protection. Police reports that he pepper sprayed Sanchez, who came into his vehicle allegedly. All of this happened. So it looks like he was accosted and thought he was in fear of his life and needed to use the weapon to get Sanchez off him. If that's the case, it'll play out in the trial. But what I think is crazy, what hit me hard on this, is the thoughts and prayers, which I was a part of, along with millions of people, millions, if you count the retweets. Hey, man, I hope everybody's okay. We didn't know about the other gentleman. We just thought Mark Sanchez got jumped and stabbed and was in the hospital. Oh, my God, how could this happen to a broadcaster working the Raider game? So I'm pretty involved with the Raider broadcast. Chris Myers, our friend, who I've talked to, but not about this issue. It's a private matter. I would not address this with Chris as a friend or on the air. And then everybody was getting yelled at, too, for saying thoughts and prayers. And then there were some scoundrels, some really bad people that were putting up the butt fumble. And they were like, Sanchez, this is not his worst moment. Oh, yes, it was the butt fumble. And people are online making light of this with the butt fumble and other issues. And I just thought that was so despicable. Either way, if you're pro Sanchez or against him, that why do people think they have to be comedians when people are in the hospital? That the thoughts and prayers thing I'm good with. The memes and everybody trashing Sanchez with football memes was just way over the top.
I have a theory about it, and we talked about this, and I've said this a lot. It's a high school mentality online, a cruel high school mentality online, where people get to make up. Before, if you weren't popular in high school and you didn't enjoy high school, you eventually had to get over it. Now you never have to get over it. You can go online and take a shot at popular people. Remember, people used to do it with Justin Bieber, and he was someone's son, and he was 16 years old. Remember how that used to bother me when we were on there? Someone's child, leave him alone. And in this case, people, it's like every other case, no matter what. When we were on the air back in the day in the hot tub time machine, and I was the number one Kobe apologist in America, a guy would just tweet me rape jokes and Kobe rape jokes. And then I go to his profile, and he's a minister holding his daughter.
Yeah.
And so I retweeted and said, this guy's a minister. And then he immediately said, oh my God, yes, I am. And probably in the big picture in his life, maybe he's a good guy. And he caught himself being a high school kid. And he did delete everything that, his awful Kobe stuff. And so that is not a topic that needs to be comedy or high school comedy. And the internet is high school for people who is a great outlet for people who didn't like high school.
More on the Mark Sanchez story. And we got people, this is on the JT and Looney podcast, which lives to eternity.
Yeah.
That's why we do this. It lives forever, but we're in a live stream also. So we're in Twitter, and we're in Looney's Twitter, and we're my YouTube channel, JT the Brick YT. And the last thing about this topic that fascinates me, if there wasn't a stabbing, if there wasn't, and if these two people were not in the hospital, would he lose his job? I'm fascinated on this topic. Would Fox have fired him? And they haven't fired him yet. There's an ongoing investigation. But, I don't think he can survive this as a broadcaster. No chance in hell. That's just a prediction. But when your company's supposed to back you, you know how many people at Fox, good people and great people at USC, love Mark Sanchez. He's been so good to so many people. You opened this up talking about how great of a broadcaster is. He's really good. He's on Fox. Okay. He's doing broadcast of NFL games. And it looks like his career is going to end over this. And it's a shame because he was walking back for 30 years, 28 years. I've been traveling with the Raiders on and off. And for some years I traveled to all the games. Now I just pick and choose. And we've all been in that boat. We've all gone out the first night. If we're traveling east, it's a Friday night. You get out there, you go have a couple of drinks, guys separate, broadcasters eat together, other guys on the staff, the trainers. Remember, I always used to tell you, I used to go out to dinner with Jim Plunkett and Tom Flores and the eye doctor and the trainers. Oh, man, did they have big credit cards. They'd order magnums of wine, and you're sitting here listening to Jim Plunkett tell a story and Tom Flores, and they're bringing out, oh, would you like to try this wine? Oh, of course I would. But then at the end of the night, everybody would go back to the team hotel, and there'd be team security there. But not JT the Brick. JT the Brick would go out later, and I'd be texting my buddies in that city, and they'd meet me out. And the next thing you know, it's 1:30 or 2 in the morning, and I get home by myself doing the same walk that Mark Sanchez did, not hammered, not obliterated, just had a good night out with friends. And I'd go right to the elevator and go to bed, text my wife, I'm back home. Sanchez has a family. He's got kids. Oh, my God, Tom. The guy went out for dinner and drinks. We don't know what happened. And his career, and he could have got killed. I mean, he literally, from the wounds that he received, could have died by something he thought he needed to do in an alleyway in downtown Indianapolis. What a shame.
And our people, no matter at what level of criminality, or in this case, spontaneous criminality that never should have happened. Are we all forgetting that there's cameras everywhere now? Is everyone forgetting that? And the answer to that is yes. And your bad behavior is going to be chronicled, and your phone's going to say where you were. But nevertheless, it may. Who cares about cameras if you just behave the way behave when no one's looking, or when you think no one's looking? Behave the same way that you do when you're with others, or when you're at church. If you just behave the same way consistently, and realize that kindness is a strength, and it shows confidence, and acting like a badass shows weakness. If you just remember that philosophy and try to behave when you think no one is looking the same way you would behave at church, then you'll be fine.
I got a topic. I try to avoid the Raiders on this podcast. I do, and the Raiders are a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And I just interviewed the head coach yesterday. And people, oh my God, it's a softball, this and that. Oh, F everybody who thinks it's a softball. I'm interviewing a head coach in the building where I work and he coaches. You don't run in there and yell at the coach and go, hey, in 3, 2, 1, and yell at the coach, right? It's the team interview. And I asked him everything. I asked him about Geno Smith. Can he be more mobile? I'm asking him. At the end of the interview, I asked him, Coach, you've been successful at every stage of your life. Fact. What has to happen for the team to turn it around? And it's up there, and he gave the answer. I'm so disappointed because Pete Carroll is a grandfather. He's a legendary coach. He's a husband. And I'm not going to say all Raider fans are turning on him, because they're not. There's a lot of great fans. It's a small portion. But I cannot believe how many people are doubting his legendary coaching career. Now, they're terrible in these first 5 games. They're really bad. Special teams, maybe the worst I've seen. Geno Smith leads the league by a lot in interceptions, not by a little, by a lot. He's got 9. Ashton Genty's getting hit in the majority of his runs behind the line of scrimmage, and the kid's so good. He's playing well. Brock Bowers is injured. We'll see what happens. Brock Bowers broke every tight end record since Mike Ditka. And Colt Miller, the best left tackle's out. He's on IR. And people actually are questioning Pete Carroll like he forgot football. And it's because they had such a bad experience with Josh McDaniels, who was pretty good to me. I interviewed him. I told you he's good to me. And, It couldn't have been nicer. Couldn't have been more professional. Oh, by the way, how's Josh McDaniels doing in New England now with Drake May? Pretty good, right? Pretty good. How's Lane Kiffin doing at Ole Miss? Just watched his documentary. Got fired by the Raiders. Pretty good. And it's a shame that people aren't questioning Pete Carroll's game plan. You have to. The team's 1-4. But oh my God, Tom, they're questioning like Pete Carroll, the person, and the coach, and the human being. The guy couldn't be a cooler, nicer, better guy with a legacy already in place, no matter what happens with the Raiders. And I hope it all works out and he leads us to a Super Bowl. Can you imagine going on the internet and on social media and trashing a guy who's so accomplished like Pete Carroll? I can't believe it.
Well, again, like I said, taking shots at the popular people is the way our high school part of our brain operates, it seems. When I say we, a lot of us human beings in America seem to be acting like that online. And we've all become, I'm speaking in a macro sense, we've all become WWF shit talkers on the internet. And can you leave as you mentioned, people, we're not talking about cartoons here. We're talking about human beings. If we go back in the hot tub time machine, there was a time I was a columnist in LA and I wrote about radio and television, had a popular column in a paper that no longer exists. And it was also online. And if I wrote something that upset somebody, I always called them because it also reminded me you're writing about human beings. So I always called them either to explain the article or to talk it out. I always called the person that I annoyed that got back to me because you had to remind, even to remind myself, you're writing about human beings, be careful. And that's why even on all of my social media, I have kindness equals confidence. It reminds me not to be a douchebag because there are times where I'll write something negative and start to make a negative comment. But before I push send, I always take a look at it. And a lot of times, okay, I got it out. It only happened in my head, that negative thought or that negative comment, that mean comment, and then I don't send it. You don't have to hit that send button, and it takes just as much energy to write something positive as it does negative.
A couple of things before we get to, let's get to it now, what we're watching. Black Rabbit. Wow. I like Black Rabbit. It's Jason Bateman, who's also producing, directing. Laura Linney's directing a lot. They were in Ozarks. It's got a big Ozarks feel. It's Jude Law, who's fantastic. I don't know how you can have an accent as Jude Law has in his real life and sound like a New Yorker the way he does. I knew you would love it because of the restaurant business behind the scenes of acquiring restaurants, trying to keep the restaurant afloat, thinking the restaurant's successful, and then having a lunatic family member who you think is like the biggest lunatic in the world, but technically you're kind of flawed, the Jude Law character. Right. I'm not done with it yet, but I am really enjoying the cinematography of downtown New York City where they filmed it. I listen to Jason Bateman's podcast from time to time, Smartless. I send you some of them. So I listened all summer as he grew out that beard on the podcast, and he was in New York City as his partner was in London, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett was in LA. So I kind of got a feel for this before it came out. And my wife and I are really liking it. I haven't finished it yet, no spoilers, but well done, Jason Bateman and that whole cast.
How many episodes in are you? Do you know? You remember?
I've watched 4. Four.
Great. And I think it's 8. And Jason Bateman is one of my hero actors for the way, he's not Daniel Day-Lewis, but that you think is so great. But he to keep it small for young actors. How do you keep it small? You don't have to be animated. You don't have to be crazy. No matter what chaos is going on, Jason Bateman is really good at playing Jason Bateman, and that is really he stays
really good.
Yeah, he stays so calm in the eye of a storm, which always makes his characters, no matter how insane in this case, so good. I keep wanting him to shave and get a haircut. I sound like Grandpa Looney, but he has to do it for character purposes in this movie. Oh, and so I'll just I won't spoil anything either. But as I did send you a text about Black Rabbit and as soon as you think you're making money in a restaurant, you want to open up another one. I was in that wheelhouse at one time, going and finding spaces. So much of it, and there's always a lot of drama. You got people in their 20s working in your restaurant, lots of them. And they're just like below deck. They're all having romances and all have a comment about each other's romance, which was a big part of this one, too. Having opinions on other people's romances that screw up everything by opening up your trap and commenting about it, which 20-somethings do. And boy, they have it nailed. They have the business nailed. They have the acting nailed. It's just so good. Have you seen this? This tie it back to sports with our clock in our head. Have you seen the Ed Sullivan documentary? You have.
And, well done.
Yeah, and well, what's really cool, which I didn't know that he was a really iconic, legendary sports columnist in New York, and then they took him off it. Maybe he upset somebody and put him on the ballet beat, which he knew nothing about. And he took the G off. Screw you, I'll take it. I'll do it. New York Times, ballet, okay. You're going to take me off sports. And then so he just dove into that, did a great job, became the entertainment guy at the newspaper, then became the entertainment guy on TV. And it also reminds me, our friend Jim Lampley, who's a friend of the show, and we both talked to extensively on and off the air for years. When he was at NBC, and he used to host the NFL pregame show before, I think it was before Costas did, when it was Jim Lampley and OJ and somebody else. And so somebody came along and didn't like him, so they punished him by putting him on boxing on Saturday afternoons. And then HBO saw him. And then he's synonymous now with boxing. The guy who did that to him didn't realize it was his favorite sport. Didn't know that. And Jim Lampley became the legendary boxing guy. His voice and face will remind us of all those great nights, either at the fights or in our house with having boxing parties with our friends. And so sometimes someone's punishment, people are really, I like the stories like with Ed Sullivan, where he turned chicken poop into chicken soup.
One of the things about the Ed Sullivan documentary everyone should see is he was a pioneer in civil rights in his own category. To put African Americans on TV and fight for them to be on television at the time was incredible. And he had so much power. And it bothers me today. I don't want to get into it in this stream or podcast. It bothers me today what's happened with late night television when the late night comedians make it super political. I mean, super political, where the guests are political, the monologues 100% political. And Ed Sullivan didn't do that. And Mike Douglas didn't do that. And Johnny Carson didn't do that. And when I watched the Ed Sullivan documentary, I said, oh my God, could you imagine? Back then, there was no such thing as any social media, no internet, no nothing, but there was television and newspapers. And just on those two fronts, he could have got a lot of heat. If Ed Sullivan was in 2025 with what he was doing and the amount of people he was putting on and what he was trying to do, I'm sure there would have been people questioning him. But great pioneer. I'm happy you brought that up. It was really good.
But I disagree with your analogy there. He was super political. It didn't come out of his mouth, though. It was his actions. And I remember Oprah saying it one day. I've probably seen 3 Oprah shows in my life, but I think she had on Diana Ross or somebody, a famous African American. She loved watching Ed Sullivan because these are her words, because it was the only time she saw colored people on TV. And it was a thriller to watch Ed Sullivan. So I remember going back, her saying that at the time. And he had such big ratings. And you remember there's a lot of cities, there was 3 or 4 channels at the time, that even though they were complaining in certain parts of the country, he didn't care. He had the power to, these people are great. These entertainers are amazing. When I say these people, I'm talking about these entertainers who happen to be, I hate that phrase, but what I meant is these entertainers are amazing. And I'm putting them on a show about entertainment, and you're not going to stop me. That's not, but he was much better at diplomacy than that. But it's great. And it's also about how, sometimes you think you're being demoted. If you even go back in his hot tub time machine from when he was a sports writer, and when he was a sports writer, he was political in his way. He did vocalize about black guys on teams and going down south and not being able to stay in motels, etc. He would write about that when people would say stick to sports. So sometimes things never change.
In the last 10 days in fabulous Las Vegas, I've seen Earth, Wind, and Fire, America, Motley Crue,
Wow.
and Paul McCartney.
Ooh.
In the last 10 days.
In the last 10 days,
so,
you've been Ed Sullivan the last 10 days going and seeing these. Wow.
And hosted about 12 radio shows and a couple of TV shows and a few podcasts. I just want to leave you on the Paul McCartney, who we saw the other night at Allegiant Stadium. That's the football stadium where the Raiders play. It's another thing where I said, I spend a lot of money on entertainment. Our budget for entertainment is concerts. We don't go to a lot of shows. Sorry, I don't want to see The Magician. I don't want to see.
Don't say it like that.
No, I don't. No. I'm going to say it like that. I don't want to go see the Cirque du Soleil anymore.
Penn and
I don't want to see
Penn and Teller are amazing.
Fantastic. I want to go to Paul McCartney and Motley Crue. Okay. So my budget goes towards that. And we had a chance to see Paul McCartney the other night. And oh my God, I'm just so happy. Buddy called me up and said, hey, I can't go. I got 2 for you. You want to go? We take them. And we're in the lower bowl, kind of off to the side. Got an angle of Sir Paul. And we sit there. We're in a football stadium. And Allegiant's done a nice job cleaning up the sound there. Because when they opened up, the first show was Garth Brooks. And you were like, whoa, sounds bouncing off glass and all this. Now they've really done an amazing job. And I know the people behind the scenes who are doing that. And McCartney came out. He played 28 songs before he got to the encore.
Wow.
And then he played 6 songs in the encore. And I had a really quick turnaround. I had to do the Raider pregame show at 8 a.m. And I'm sitting there at 10:45 at night, standing still, listening to McCartney, who I believe is 82. Both of my sons have birthdays. One has it June 18th with Paul McCartney. The other one has it May 24th with Bob Dylan. And I won't see Bob Dylan. I won't see Bob Dylan because he can't sing. Bob can't sing, and that's a big problem for me. McCartney sang beautifully. So whatever they did for his voice, because I saw Vince Neil the week before on Motley Crue, and Vince was passable. He had a stroke, a lead stroke, and Vince was kind of moving slow, but singing Girls, 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 and same old situation with the backgrounds and a little help with the voice tracking in the background. He was good. He wasn't bad. But Paul McCartney, I had a really big moment driving home with my wife. We didn't drive. We took an Uber. That anybody says, when do you want to retire? I have a new guy, not an athlete. It's Paul McCartney. Because Paul McCartney at 82 years old didn't take a break. His drummers, not so much. His guitar players took a break. And Paul did solo acoustic, Blackbird, and all that.
Right.
It was a beautiful evening watching Paul McCartney perform. Probably the last time I'll ever see him. I doubt I'm going to see him anywhere around the world. But I really left the Paul McCartney show saying, man, thank God I went and saw it. It was a beautiful evening of music.
The retire word, the R word, I hate it. I watch people. I have a colleague who retired who's a news guy, and it looks awful. He's bragging about when you're retired, you can play pickleball in the wind. Ugh. Oh my God. So the people, because we didn't, we chose stuff that where you can just keep doing it. Brent Musburger took the job as the play-by-play voice of the Raiders when he was 79. He was incredible. And look at what Paul McCartney's doing. Do what you love and you'll live a long time, but be careful of the retirement can be overrated. You just try to do, especially if you're younger, do what you love where it doesn't feel like work, and it's you'll enjoy life more. You got to keep moving. Just got to keep moving.
It's funny you say that as I'm looking behind me here on my bookshelf with all the books I haven't read. My dad, I have a piece of my dad. I have a collection of all my dad's great memorabilia, and I'll never forget. My dad retired at 59. If he's watching or listening, but my dad never retired because he did taxes on the side, which was kind of like a full-time job. He still does taxes, 87 years old, still does taxes for our family, which are pretty complex. He's got grandsons and granddaughters and me and my wife, and he does taxes. But so he never really retired, but he retired from the government at 59 years old.
Wow.
Well, I'm 59. And I say to myself, I can retire now. I deserve to retire. This isn't retirement. I guess this is what at some point my retirement would look like years from now in Florida or on the beach somewhere else, is getting behind a microphone and talking with some revenue stream. But I believe that people should retire and have hobbies in their
Or
vocation.
another job. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because I could easily picture myself, because I'd love to live somewhere exotic. I'd love to go to Mexico City and teach English as a second language. That's because I have teaching in my blood. It's center of attention. You have a classroom, so I know that would fulfill that need. So right, if I did, I would still be doing something. If that makes sense. And I think for you, it's going to be tough, because you're going to be offered a job at WFAN in New York, and to be because if you went on that radio station, because radio, people are going to say, "Who's this?" And that people will say, "Well, he's one of us." The second you went on WFAN, it would be like you worked there for 30 years. I still picture that for you. You could be the play-by-play voice of the Raiders on the radio in the future. Everyone who does that's great, does it for a great job. But if one of those guys stepped down, you'd be terrific at that. So what you do with microphones will always get in your way of sitting on the beach somewhere sipping wine, which is a great thing for your health, by the way.
Well, I can promise you one thing, not that there's anything wrong with that. That's a loony disclaimer coming up here. When I do retire, I will not be a greeter at Walmart. Thanks for listening to the JT and Looney Podcast.
And I apologize